At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, folks. This is Super NES Podcast, episode number 259. I am Greg, joined always by Joe.
Hello.
And first of all, I want to thank you very much for tuning in to us as always. This episode is later coming to you than we had planned originally. I apologize for that. Both Joe and I had some things going on in our lives that necessitated pushing this podcast back a couple weeks. In an effort to try to make up for it, we are going to be doing a Hail Mary. We decided earlier, and we're going to release the next episode with a 1 week delay as opposed to 2 weeks, as usual, to try to get a little bit back on the schedule. We'll still be behind a little bit, but I think that actually, Joe, that just reminded me. We do need to actually double check all the dates in our planned games the rest of the year to see if we need to shuffle anything else around. But I believe this will be sufficient to get us back on track to get everything released for this year as we originally had planned. So just wanted to mention that. Just wanted to cover that like from the get go. Apologies for the delay. Next episode will come to like a week faster. And also another reason for the delay was that this is actually a pretty meaty in some respects, maybe not meaty in others, but as far as doing research and everything, which is primarily what I do for this podcast, we're covering 4 games in this episode because it made sense to lump all 4 of these games together, and we've never done 4 games in a single episode before. So even though the games may not be the deepest games in the world, it still takes time for us to research and play 4 games. Yeah. So that was another reason. Had we foreseen anything going on, we might have shuffled games around, but unfortunately, like I said, neither of us really was planning for things to happen as they happen. So, but the good news is that most of the remaining games, the games this year, will not require as much exhaustive time looking into them. So, what games are we covering that necessitate 4 games in one bundle? You may ask. Well, we're looking at a very interesting, not very popular, but still very unique series of Edutainment titles. The company that published the games officially called this series the Hero Health series. So that's the name that I'm going to use to refer to them as. Joe probably has his own term for them. Some of them may not be family friendly, but like a kids health series, or also is it like the popular one I've seen online. But like I said, the publisher referred to them as Hero Health, so I'm going to refer to them as the Hero Health series. So. And the 4 games in this series that we'll be covering in chronological order when they were released was Captain Devlin, Rex Ronan, Pecky and Marlin, and Brocky the Tyrannosaurus. So
Bronchi the Brachiosaurus.
Yeah. Because they
goes to the bronchi.
Yep, pun on words there. So, anyway, so. I'm sure some people out there listening have heard of these games, or know them by word of mouth, or because they do have the reputation as being horrible games. Maybe some of the best games, the best worst games of the system, I guess you could say. But as we've said before in the past, one of the reasons Joe and I play these games, we want to experience, how much of the internet hate is actually worth it for these games. Because a lot of games people actually thought of pretty well back when they came out. definitely got trashed. Maybe usually unfairly when the internet came along. I think E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2800 is maybe the best example of that, because a lot of people liked the game when it came out. And it's really only when the internet came on the scene about 20 years later that it started picking up the really negative rep that it has these days. But anyway, so yeah. Oftentimes we find that games we've covered on this podcast are not quite as bad as people online have said that they are, with a very few exceptions that really are worth the title of stinkers. Listen to our recent episode about the worst games we're not going to, but some of the worst games we're not going to cover in their own episode, for more on that train of thought. But anyway, I knew about these games. I never played them. I think Joe's probably in the same boat, correct?
So I knew about Captain Novolin, but the other ones I did not know anything about. So
Captain Novolin is the most famous game of the series for sure, and it's probably the one. And it's probably the one we're going to be talking about the most because of that fact. But yeah, there were, like I said, sorry, there were other games in this Heroes Health series. So let me talk about some of the background and some of the setting for this, because actually they're pretty interesting. So as anybody who may have a kid or they may have struggled with life affecting and sometimes life threatening conditions in the past, trying to educate kids about this stuff is not always easy, because it's like the medical terms. Joe works in the insurance field. I'm sure he probably can talk more about this than I could, but a lot of medical terms and lingo used and what's going on in your body and everything is very hard to explain to kids. It's confusing. It's complicated. It's not going to make a lot of sense to them probably. There's the famous story. You probably have heard this one too, Joe. That's like, a lot of kids will call cystic fibrosis 69 roses because they can't properly pronounce pronounce the disease name, which is a far more flattering title than that disease deserves.
Right.
But so trying to help kids with this kind of stuff was something that had been batted around for many, many years before these games came out. And people, like doctors were looking for ways to be able to talk about the conditions with kids. Parents were looking for ways to be able to properly explain to them. You had books, you had like educational VHS tapes, that kind of stuff. Like it helped some degree, but it's like. But there's one company called Rhea Systems, based in California, that primarily was a small software publisher house. They would develop. They develop some titles in house. They also license other titles, in the companies. And as part of the business, Rhea Systems had contracts with medical companies, supplying them software applications. So the president and founder of the company, Steve Brown, after several years of working with medical companies, realized that there's actually a pretty good need here for a new and better way to give children medical information. Diabetes was first and foremost what I was thinking about, because he noticed that seemed to be the area that they had the hardest time with. But he also felt that the field was ripe for other possible edutainment video games, areas as well. So, it's like, okay, let's branch out. Let's create software team in house to look at trying to publish some titles aimed toward parents and hospitals to help them, to help these kids with it, because The idea on paper is pretty sound because, like kids like video games. It's like, so if there was some way of being able to get them to learn about their conditions that was affecting their health in a better way, it seems like a win for everybody involved. Because it's like, because we talked about, it can be very difficult and hard and boring to explain to kids some information about this, about what's going on with them, with their friends, or whatever. That may be very important. But how do you coach that in a way that actually gets through to them? So, and this idea has not gone away either. It's like, this is still very much an ongoing need and a problem going on today. So I wasn't talking about this later on, but there have been other games themed around these same ideas that have come out in the years since then. So other companies are still trying to revise the idea. In many ways, radio systems was just simply ahead of the curve by being the first ones to really recognize a need to try to talk about things like diabetes in video games to kids. So that market has not gone away. So there definitely still is an ongoing situation for that in the market, like the market today. So radio systems reached out to several companies to get help. They got funding. They got funding from the National Institutes of Health. They also signed a contract with the company Novo Nordisk, which is the very large pharmaceutical company that makes among other things like diabetes a medication, insulin, that kind of stuff. So and then they had and then with a budget that was presumably healthy enough, they actually went out and hired a pretty good developer to program this first game, which became the Captain Novolin, talking about as I said, diabetes. Sculpture Software, who we've talked about before already in this podcast, and is probably best known for doing the Super Star Wars games. So these people knew their stuff. It was a pretty experienced developer house. I'm thinking that I couldn't find anything online saying either way, but I'm just thinking that this game was developed before the Star Wars games. Let me just say that say that first Captain Nolan came out in November of 1992. So, but they had experience already working in Super NES at this point. So I'm thinking probably either they read this. I'm thinking either the budget from Radio was healthy enough to hire the company, or Sculpture believed that the idea was good and agreed to do the game on the cheap for them, right, or both. So, but anyway, so anyway, that's how the game came about. So not actually talking about all the background and thought and the thought process and the plan that went on behind the game. Let me turn it over to Joe to tell you actually how the game actually plays.
All right. So here in Captain Novolin, you are tasked with saving Pineville's diabetic mayor from aliens and their leader, Blubbering Blob, I think it was his name, if I remember correctly. So the mayor only has enough insulin for 48 hours. How convenient. Before we get into the action of the level, we are given advice from the doctor, and also you get advice from a dietitian on how to maintain a diet and your insulin. And this happens throughout the game, generally before and at the end of each level. It'll tell you what kind of good stuff that you can eat, and what you should stay away from. And as you play through the level, you will grab those foods that were described in the beginning, and obviously you're going to avoid the ones that are not. And in most cases, those are your big aliens. This has a weird mechanic, so you can jump on the aliens a la Super Mario Brothers style. But you have to push down when you're doing it. If you don't, you'll end up doing no damage and taking damage yourself. That being said, it took me a little while to realize that. I have my notes that collision detection was horrible. I don't think it was as bad once I figured out that I had to push down to kind of do a stomp on them, but it still didn't work 100% of the time. So, it is what it is. One of the things that would have been really helpful, and I should have thought about this and probably talked to my doctor, but each game starts off with you putting in your numbers for your blood glucose level, and then basically the game, as far as the informational stuff, is kind of timed out for your specific situation. I found the levels pretty simple. You could pretty much just kind of, and you'll see this is a theme with a couple of these games. You could just run to the right, and just beat the game. So it's the educational part. They're not difficult. There's definitely some polish that is needed on these games. But for the most part, it's there to educate you. So it is meant for, the youngest children, to be able to pick this up and go through, presumably playing it responsibly and picking up apples and crackers and, sandwiches or whatever to keep the blood, keep your insulin up and whatever else. But, essentially, if you just quote unquote plow through the game, you can definitely do it. I thought the levels, although there's only 5, but I felt like the levels given were varied enough to kind of keep you interested. So you have a cityscape, you get 2 boat levels where you're on a lake, then you're in a forest, and then you have mountain levels, and then the last one is on the alien ship where you're gonna beat up blubbering blob. So, it's here to do its job, and it gives you your the advice that you would need as a child. And to be fair, there are some adults who do not understand how diabetes works. So, as much as this is for children, I would not, hold it against you if you just recently came back from the doctor and were told you have type 1 diabetes, and, you putting your numbers into the game to try to check it out, make it a little bit more realistic. But yeah, it's hard to poop on a education, an edutainment type game, because it succeeds in doing its job. It is teaching you what it is meant to teach you. The gameplay is secondary. The fun and the enjoyment, that would help, obviously, but it's not a necessity. So I was actually kind of shocked when you were talking about the history and whatever else. I was expecting you to be like, oh yeah, they got all this money, they sponsored the game, Sculptured Software was already busy doing, it's 92, so November of 92, so they would have been just getting probably
starting Super Star Wars about this time.
I was gonna say, so beta version of this would have been going through as they were doing Super Star Wars, and then on top of that, remember they also did the Mortal Kombat games. So they had some stuff that they were going to be getting into. So like I said, I thought it was interesting because I was really expecting through the history section you were going to be like, oh yeah, they had 2 months to figure this whole thing out. And it would kind of make sense.
Maybe they did. Like I said, unfortunately, information about the actual development of this is pretty. So I was while there are articles talking about the company and the idea behind the games, the actual development of the games themselves is very spotty. So maybe they were given a tight deadline. It's possible. But yeah. So the idea at least was old, but how much time the sculpture was given to program the game, no idea. But
so and the last thing I just want to mention is the ending. You literally get a handshake from the mayor, and that's it. It's clear that this was, like I said, designed to educate and nothing more.
Given how short and easy the game is, it very well could have been put together 2 months because it's only about 15, 20 minutes to play the game.
Yeah.
So,
I
agree with almost everything that you said. Because the game is designed for kids, it's very easy. I do think that the variety of gameplay here is positive. I did not expect there to be a speedboat stage. So that was a surprise. So let's talk about the positives first. Graphically the game's pretty good for the Super NES game, I thought. It's very cartoonish. Bright big icons. You can easily read everything, see what everything is. Given how much text is in this game, that's important. And the text is all very legible, very clear.
Yep.
The portraits of people in this game are actually very impressive by Super NES standards. I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
So graphically, the game's pretty good, I thought. Music-wise, it's not horrible either. I know the songs are not great, but they're very appropriate for the game. So I heard worse things.
Yep.
Control was kind of fine. The programming end of things is solid. Collision detection's good and everything else like that. So the major, however, again, talking about the graphics, the gameplay, that's what started that's the negatives the game start to show. Leaving aside the fact this game is easy and perhaps quote unquote dumb because it is made for kids with a very specific edutainment purpose.
Yeah.
There's 2 design choices that software made to program this game. I don't understand why they did it. They did this way because I think if these 2 things had not been done this way, it might have improved it might have resulted in the game not quite being ragged on so heavily as it was back in the day because it was ragged on. We'll get into reviews here in a little bit, but it's there's two big design choices that make me go in WTF. One, why is the captain your player avatar of this game? Why is he so big? He takes up so much of the screen space. I don't get it. And second, why can he only attack in midair? The midair only attacking adds a little bit of challenge to a game that doesn't really have any. But that's more like artificial challenge. That's not making the game harder for the player's sake. That's making the game harder because of the player. If that makes sense. Yeah. But I just don't get the design choices because the result of that makes for a game that's pretty frustrating to play. I thought it's I appreciate the game for the actual gameplay itself. It would be okay if it wasn't for the fact if it wasn't for those 2 things. That add artificial complexity to a game that didn't require it. It wasn't supposed to have it, honestly. So, so it's this is gonna be a theme. I think the series. Great idea, great concept. The information given here is great. The information is great. It's definitely presented in a very kid friendly manner.
Yeah.
The game itself is okay, but it could be a lot better if certain changes had been made, including, like I said, those two things. It's like, I think you still have, and for seeing and for looking at some reviews, I think modern games trying to teach kids how to deal with type 1 diabetes is better in these regards. But it's like, you definitely can have a better game while still teaching them the educational part, because edutainment games can be fun. And, I'm old enough, and I think Joe probably also remembers this, because our age differences are not that huge. Mm-hmm. But I spent a lot of time playing Oregon Trail and the Carmen Sandiego games growing up, and those games are great and can be educational at the same time. So I mean, it definitely can be done. I think that this was a good first attempt at stabbing this problem. It was stabbing. I didn't mean to make that pun, but anyway. But it's like, again, I think this game was ahead of its time in some ways, because it was really the first game designed for kids to help them like this problem. I think this laid the groundwork for some of the better games to come down the pike, because they dealt with this kind of issue. Yeah. So. Anyway, that's pretty much my that's pretty much my overall thoughts about the gameplay.
And like I said in my notes, I mentioned that I feel like the game was rushed, or they were given a short timeline, whatever it was.
It definitely could be. Yes, I couldn't find anything confirming that, but
right, you can't.
It could be, yeah.
Substantiate that with the proper research, but like the graphics, I love the detail on them. There's large sprites. Yeah, he takes up half the screen, but also like it's amazing, like the detail that they have on him and everything else. And like when he does get hit too many times, and he bends over and he falls to his knees and he's all dizzy. Then you kind of feel that way when you've had too much sugar or crappy stuff when you have diabetes. So at least it was represented well. That also led to, again, why I harp on they probably didn't have too much time to work on it, is like super slowdown on some spots. It's only a few spots, and it's not like, oh my god, it breaks the game, but it's still something that's there, and it's obviously because the sprites are so large. You can only have so many enemies on the screen at one time, and it's generally, for the most part, one enemy on screen at one time. If you do get two, you do notice a bit of a slowdown, and if you have the miracle of getting three enemies on the same screen, let me tell you, that's almost like a pause screen. It's hard to do, for one.
To be fair, many early Super NES games suffer from slowdown issues. So,
and I agree with you.
But you're right, the large sprites didn't help.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The music is meh. And that is exactly what I put in my notes. Like, the music is meh. It's not good, but it's also like, it doesn't suck. It works. It works.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things to kind of take away here is the game was set out to do a specific thing, and in all fairness, it completed its task. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. Exactly.
That's actually like a great segue here, because it's like, because doing my research, I found out that the game was tested with its target audience before audience when it was finished. Basically, 10,000 copies of the game were given out by Novo to hospitals, parents of kids with diabetes, also to I didn't realize this was a thing. I guess there's like also diabetes summer camps the kids go to, where it's like they actually learn in a summer camp environment how to better cope and deal with their diabetes. Okay. So I actually did not know that was a thing. It makes perfect makes perfect sense. There is, but anyway, some copies of that but some copies of the game are given out to those too. So it's like, and they also, the company Raina Systems also did a study, the studies themselves. In one study, 23 diabetic children, 10 boys, 13 girls in the age range of 6 to 16, and one parent. I don't know, like one, but like why, like one parent, but whatever. We're given the game, played it for several hours, and like give the feedback on it. So, all the evaluations of the game for target audience were great. Everybody who the game was aimed to enjoyed the game and thought the game did a good job at what it was set out to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sure these kids realize that this is not the great, that this is not Mario.
Right.
But as far as trying to help them as well as have fun at the same time, for them at least it worked.
Yeah.
The studies said that, like several of them felt that, the studies point out that, some of the kids felt like, it really helped them understand better what was going on with them. Others said, the information like be very useful talking to their friends like about diabetes.
Yep.
Like parents found it very useful to be able to help to be able to connect with the kids about about the disease and help them to learn better about it. Celebrities who worked for who did volunteer work for like juvenile diabetes foundations also praised the game. It's like, for its target audience, the game seems like it went over pretty well with like they're going for, which is what you're going for, which really the company was aiming for. So the game was sold in stores. How many copies got sold, I don't know. Like I said, I know Novo distributed 10,000 copies free as part of their contract with Raina Systems. Like I said, Raina did publish the game in stores too for a whopping $60 price point, I may add, which is kind of on the high end of Super NES games. But so I suppose it should not come as a shock, however, that the game on the general public, when it was sold on store shelves, was panned universally. So, but it's like, is that really fair? It's like, yes, it's a horrible game. I almost think that Raina should realize. I almost think Raina should realize that this was going to happen, and not limited the game to mail order sales only or something like that. Yeah. Because putting it out there in the public meant everybody was going to review the game, talk about it, and they did. And of course, all the reviews for the game were absolutely horrible because the game. Because the game is not a regular quote unquote game that everybody expects to play. So now in hindsight, was this fair? Probably. Like I said, I don't think Raina was not the smartest in deciding how to approach trying to sell the game to recoup some of the money on this, which is an ongoing issue we'll talk about here with the other games. But they should have foreseen that the games get panned.
Yeah.
Maybe they did. They didn't care. But does the game deserve the title of one of the 10 worst Super NES games that it often gets attributed to? I don't think so. I think there are worse games out there than this by far. The game's at least playable. It's programmed well. It handles well. Complaints about the gameplay aside, if you take the game for what it is, it does what the game. Basically, it does what the game. The game does what it's set out to do, and as far as a pure game, it's pretty weak. But again, I think there are much worse games that console out there than this one game. So, is it bad? Yes. Is it deserving to be on top 10 list? I honestly don't think so.
No.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, I already said, like, it completed its task. If you judge it based on what it was created for, as far as I'm concerned, it was a success. So does this game deserve to be labeled as, one of the worst? No, I don't think so. if they had set out to make a platforming action game, then yes, it is one of the worst action platforming games that you could probably come across, outside of, something that's like literally broken. It would only fail there because it's so generic. And it, like, they didn't, like, it's just there. That's the best way I can explain it. Like, as a platformer, it is just there. It exists. As an educational tool, it completes the job, does it well, and, clearly through the research that they had done with the cartridges they had given out to people, it did what it was supposed to. I think the error in their ways is very much what you were talking about, and that was releasing it publicly, and just putting it on the shelf for $60. Definitely not a way to go. I agree. Mail order, or don't go through Nintendo to get like official cartridges, because that's really what you're paying for, is the cartridge and the chipset. And there were other third-party, publishers who could, make those, or production that can make those carts and whatnot, be non-licensed.
Yeah, but at night too, though, I don't think those existed quite yet. The third-party publishers came along later on in the system's lifespan.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But yeah, that's the only reason I can see that they decided to release it, commercially, because maybe it was something in the contract with Nintendo to be able to get those carts made. You know what I mean?
There were minimum orders required. Yes.
Yeah.
How many depended upon the system, and what year it was, and what kind of game you were making. But there were minimum orders that you had to place for cartridges. Like I said before, I don't know how many copies were made. This segues very well like an eBay. We'll cover eBay pricing later in each segment to keep things simple. This game's the cheapest of the 4 games on eBay, which makes me think that it probably was the one that sold the most out of the 4 games. So, like I said before, I can confirm 10,000 plus copies were made. I have no idea how many the plus is, but yeah, this is the cheapest game to find on eBay.
Yeah.
All these games can be found on eBay, but your options for most of them are pretty slim. Understandably, at least with Captain Novoland, you have at least the most choices. The time of doing this research, 13 copies of the game were listed on eBay, and 4 of them had sold recently. So, card only prices. These prices always are North America only and include shipping. Card only ranging those recently sold copies sold anywhere from $86 to $130. There were no recent sales on CIB copies. But going upon past history from other sites and also looking at what people on eBay were asking for CIB copies, it looks like the usual CIB sale price is anywhere to $400 to $550. Expensive, but not outrageous. There are Super NES games that definitely are more expensive to get your hands on. There even was a sealed copy of the game that sold recently for a whopping $10,000. So that definitely was a holy. Yeah. So that definitely was a holy grail for a collection. But like I said, this game must have sold the best because the cheapest on eBay as far as pricing goes. But anyway, so. With the groundwork done here on this one game, the next 3 games should go a little bit quicker because all the games are pretty shallow, to be honest. Understandably so. But the next game in the series was Rex Ronin Experimental Surgeon, which came out in May of 1994. All these games, by the way, were North America only. Obviously because the limited distribution network I'm sure that Rayna Systems had. this game, this game is the second game of the series. Again, developed by Sculpture Software. This one was about tobacco, which I'm sure Joe can agree upon is still a pretty significant threat, like of kids and teens.
Yep.
I think the last studies I saw indicates that it is that hard tobacco use has gone down in recent years, but flavored stuff has definitely gone up.
Yep.
Which about the government's trying to crack down like that kind of stuff. But nicotine usage in tobacco cigarettes are still an ongoing issue. So still a very timely problem that they're dealing with. This game also got support from a branch of the U.S. government. In this case, the U.S. Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. And so basically, it's kind of the same premise. It's like you have somebody. All these games follow the same template. There's the story. They're all like 2D side-scrolling action video games. There's a lot of educational information being thrown to the player as you play the game. Obviously, teach kids to play about whatever kind of issue that there is going on to. Joe. So obviously, like I said, this game talks about the dangers of tobacco. This one definitely more hits you over the head with it, I thought, than the past game did. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about the story and the gameplay here for this one?
Yeah. So, we have Jake Westboro, who has it all. He's got a wife, he's got a child, a large house, a nice car, and he is a CEO of Blackburn Tobacco. Jake has a history. He's been smoking since he was 15, and is now dying from the effects of the cigarettes he once sold. Rex Ronan volunteers to shrink himself so he can enter Jake's body and fight to remove the tar, nicotine, and precancerous cells to help him survive. The tobacco company, of course, does not want Jake to survive because Jake may talk ill of the tobacco industry, especially the Blackburn Tobacco Company. So,
which has happened before in real life.
Correct.
So yeah. So
they end up sending in microbots to stop Rex's efforts to save Jake. They want Jake dead, and you as Rex, not only are you trying to do the right thing and try to save this man's life, but on top of it, Jake's probably going to spill his guts if he does. If you as Rex die in the game, so does Jake. You guys are inseparable. Premise of the game is pretty simple. I pretty much just gave it to you.
Yeah, and also, the premise, the premise of this game is not unique. There's numerous games, movies, whatever, type of whatever that also they use the idea of human shrunk down, enters another human body for whatever reason, whatever. It's a very popular idea. So I will say the story was very good because because unlike the last game, it's more realistic.
Yeah.
The premise is great because the premise has been before for many, a bunch of other good movies and games. So it's right off the bat, I'm like, okay. So far, first impressions are very positive because it's you have the groundwork here for what's it sounds like pretty good educational game as far as
right.
As far as educational games go, and then and also the opening graphics again amazing. It's the opening cutscenes, the cutscenes like the title screen, the people, the backgrounds, whatever. Great. It's they're even better than last game I thought. But so all this makes a wonderful first impression going into the game. But then you start playing the game itself, and that's where things rapidly go downhill, unfortunately. So, Joe, Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So you travel through the body. You start off by cleaning tar off the teeth, and you get these little green orbs that you can hit with your weapon, and they're trivia questions. Obviously, answer the trivia question. It gives you a little bit of life. I don't remember what would happen if you got them wrong. I don't think anything. I just think you just kind of like get like a small blast and take a little chunk of health, but nothing too major. From the teeth, we go down to almost like a Tempest style type gameplay where you're going down the throat, cleaning out phlegm. Then we end up in the lungs, cleaning out cancerous cells. Then the bronchial tubes, then into the other lung, then to the heart, and then the final part is the brain. And then obviously you'll, make your way out of the body. Man, this is another game. So the first 3 levels, I thought were actually pretty good. And then I felt like they just either gave up or were rushed, and it all fell apart. Again, this is another game where this one's, I think, even more egregious because you can literally just run to the right and progress, and in doing so, you don't even have to hit those little green things that are supposed to educate you. So on top of not getting the education, it's also super easy and can be just ran through. So who is supposed to be for? You know what I mean? You would think young kids because of the way it was programmed, but then
and that's and sorry, just to interject. And that was again the target audience that they did their target audience that tested the game with.
Yeah,
the game was tested with. The game was tested. Again, the company that studies they let kids age from 10 to 16 play the game.
Okay, yeah, because I mean I get it. Like teenagers, like you get that peer pressure. You're more likely to possibly try smoking, whatever else. So I can understand how, going through and realizing the damage that you're doing to the body and all that. But I feel like anyone younger than that, they already have the mindset, whether their parents smoke or someone in the family smokes, they're already like, oh, that's yucky. Like, that stinks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're not interested. Yeah. So I think, honestly, the target audience was missed here, in my opinion. I think if they had if they had focused on gameplay here instead of trying to get a message across, I think they probably would have been more successful, and they would have captured that older demographic. I mean, when this came out, I would have been 13, so this would have been a perfect target to for me to be like, oh man, like that's what's going on in my dad's body while he's smoking. Like, I already don't like the smell. I already don't like to be around it. But now, like, I know what's going on and what it can do to your body. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that I still wouldn't have started smoking 8 years later, but, but yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. It's, like I said, this feels rushed, kind of like Captain Novolin. This one's slightly different because, like I said, the first 3 levels are actually really good. I'll get all this out of the way now. Like, the visuals in those first 3 levels look fantastic. They did a great job
in this game. Yeah. So,
I just feel like once you move out of, like, because you got the when you're going through the throat, you got that Tempest style where you're in a ship, you're shooting the phlegm, and then like you're back in the cancerous cells that are in the lungs, and it's like on the wall. It gives almost like a Contra alien feel. And then it's almost like that's where they stopped, and they were just like, rinse and repeat. And when you're in the bronchial tubes, it's once again that Tempest style, and it's the same kind of, gameplay. And then you move into the other lung and the heart and then the brain. And the brain, you really can tell they just gave up. It's like you're jumping on blood vessels, which are supposed to be, I guess, the nervous system in the brain. But like it doesn't really equate. And I that's the biggest thing for me. Like, sprite work is great. And like I said, those first 3 levels, I think they did a great job. But then it just feels like it got tapered off and they just got lazy, copied and pasted, and I don't know, just personally kind of didn't do it for me. I do think it's funny that, once you beat the game and you exit the body, it just pops up with a newspaper article declaring that Rex Ronan is a hero. This is another game. The music and sound effects are serviceable. They're not great, and they don't suck. So, this one I think has a little bit more to it than Captain Noblin, because you are using like a weapon, and you can pretty much shoot that thing in all 8 directions, and but the nanobots aren't like difficult. Same kind of thing happens here, where like it's like 1 or 2 on the screen at once. They're never really a threat. And then they got the quizzes and whatnot. Like it's not like Captain Noblin, where like the information was kind of beaten into you. Here they're just like, here's all the exposition beforehand, and then play the game. That's it.
Mostly, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think part of that's because tobacco is a much different disease than diabetes is.
Right.
How do you educate about it's different? But yeah, I think but yeah, I agree with you. I think this format's better because it's like it tells you as you're entering each body part what you're doing, as well the dangers of what nicotine can do to that body part. So that's your educational stuff, pretty much. When you start the stage. So, but anyway, while I agree with part of what you said, I definitely do feel like I definitely do agree with you. I agree with you that I felt that this feels like a cheap Contra clone to me. And while I do think that Sculpture probably did rush this, I actually hated this more than I actually hated the gameplay worse than the last game, to be honest. Because, like I said, I went into this very positively because everything's such a good premise going into the game, and then like the gameplay. I mean, the gameplay of the game is probably going to be bad, but oh boy, it's like Sculpture Software definitely had programmers that were working on this who did not know how to handle the Super NES because the Super NES because it's like first of all the whole premise like you're using a flamethrower like the human body, really, but couldn't they have done you couldn't light them like a pressure washer or something at least, but and then also it's like like the smart bombs are nice, and the weapons can be upgradable is also nice, but you can't really switch between them. So it's like it really makes some of the later some of those frustrating. If you have the wrong gun equipped and it's like you can't change it. Joe mentioned the terrible platforming in the brain section. I thought the platforming the whole game. I thought the platforming the whole game was terrible. It's not good at all. Collision detection is terrible. The leaps result in Rex easily getting stuck in invisible obstructions, like wherever you can't even see. Sometimes. Sometimes I literally had to brute force the game to proceed by getting stuck and sprite clipping through, which controls like I said are laggy and buggy. There's still slowdown in this game, unfortunately, despite being 1994. And those pseudo 3D rail shooter sections when you try between stages. Oh boy. are those terrible, but the color detection is even worse than them. The draw distances are horrible. So it really, I quickly found out that just going the edge of your screen on the corner and hammering the fire buttons as best you can is the best way to handle that. So it's like, at least the previous game, the programming was solid. This game, I can't even say that. The programming is just horrible the whole way through. Yeah. It's just terrible. It's like I don't know what happened here. It's like I really think this is like a rush job. Where Scott should definitely. I don't know if the first game was a rush job. This game definitely felt like a rush job to me. Where it's like they spent all the and again, the game does again, the game's trying to educate somebody, kids, on a very noble, important message. The educational material is presented in a good way. The graphics are great. I mean, the graphics easily are far and away the best thing about the game. Yeah. It is a bit longer, about half an hour to play through at least. So I would like to get that much, but it's and again. The testing the company did test market again had the game positively received, among the kids who played it. So again, the game set out to do, but it's like. But again, but as far as gameplay, I did not hate playing Captain Overland. It wasn't very much fun, but at least it was tolerable. I hated playing this because the game just falls flat every possible way. And it's like it probably also shouldn't come as a surprise that Captain Overland got all the attention and hype when it first came out. Nobody really paid attention pay attention later three games of the series. There are very few, if any, contemporary reviews of this game of when it came out. All of the most of which you find all in these days is all just simply more retrospective analysis of the series. So, but again. The company had a goal in mind. They set out to do that goal. The game apparently did its goal, per their testing and studies. So mission accomplished in that area, I guess. Yeah. But it's like I'm not shocked that Radio Systems decided to change developers after this game. It's maybe they realized that, and they realized that they couldn't have such a horrible game. Gameplay being marred by hurting an already limited market as it was. So, but anyway, anything you want to add on or say about the game before we move on, Joe?
Nope. I mean, I think we pretty much summed that up, and it's. I mean, I agree. I don't. It's not good gameplay. Like I said, graphically, it's got some interesting stuff there, but that's about it.
Yeah. So it's like, like I said, one of those games unfortunately, we go into with very high expectations because everything looks great starting it, but then you're like, oh, this is not good at all. Yeah. But unfortunately, anyway,
this one deserves the hate it gets.
Yes. I do think so. And because of that, the game didn't sell as well. And because of that, eBay prices are definitely higher for this game than they were in the past game for sure. Harder to find too. 7 copies listed on eBay as we doing research. 5 copies of the game are recently sold. The game sold currently for the range of $118 to $155. Again, CIB, no recent copies sold, but again, $455 to $550, like the range, that seems right. There was a sealed copy listed online for $650, and so a sealed copy of the game had recently sold for $1,313. So a little bit higher prices than the last game. Yeah. Still not what I would call outrageous, but. So anyway, for the last two games in the series, Pecky and Marlin and Brocky, the Brontosaurus, Reina Systems tapped a new developer, a company called WaveQuest, to do these two games. I could not find any information about like WaveQuest. They definitely seemed like they were a very like small company. Definitely was like scrambling to do any kind of work tossed their way, and unfortunately, it shows. I think, Packy and Marlin was the third game in the series to come out. At least June. At least June of 2095. Again, they went back to diabetes. I don't know why they felt the need to go back to diabetes again, but they maybe decided that they could take a different approach with the game. Take a different approach with their education materials this time around. But curiously enough, this game actually was going to be quote unquote good enough for it to get a PC port several years later, 1998, by a company called Kids Health Software. So there's that. The only game in the series that also got released on something other than a Super NES. So anyway, what are we doing in this game, Joe?
So this game wants you to know that it is here to educate you on diabetes, but it also wants you to know that it is not telling you how to manage your diabetes. I had to get that out of the way because I thought that was funny that when that screen comes up, it's like big bold letters, your diabetes. So this one is not like Captain Novolin where it can be personalized. This is just a generic overview of, blood glucose numbers and taking your insulin. Story is a gang of rats has invaded Camp Waukee. They stole the food and medical supplies, hiding them all over the camp. Packy and Marlin are diabetic elephants. Go figure. They are tasked with retrieving the stolen goods and wiping out the malicious rodents, all while checking their blood glucose and taking insulin. So this is a side-scrolling platformer. Run, jump, and you shoot stuff from your trunk. There were some icons that you could get that changes what you shoot out of your trunk. For the most part, it looked like droplets of water and red peanuts were like the ones that I came across. It's, man, it's generic, but it's not generic, if that makes sense. So you have a world map, which is pretty cool. So you're already set up for an adventure. As you get into the levels are actually pretty well detailed and pretty vast. Your sprites are much smaller than the previous two games. I think that sprite work is actually pretty good. You collect food to help maintain your level for your diabetes. So the object is not to eat too much, but also don't eat too little. Levels, you get there's water levels, there's haunted houses, there is a forest level, there's even like a playground area, which I would assume is outside of the camp. Every level starts off, it shows you the different foods that you can eat. Yeah, I mean, it's different, but kind of more of the same. So one of the things that as an action platformer, not bad. I think this game does a really good job with that. The educational part is pretty broad and vague, in my opinion. This is more like if you already have diabetes and have been maintaining it, like this is like a reminder, if that makes sense. I feel like there's enough educational stuff here for diabetes, but it's definitely not like you don't have the doctor popping in, to kind of be like beat you over the head with it. It's just kind of like they built a platformer and then incorporated diabetes into it is how I feel with this game, which is honestly the way the other two games should have been done as well. But you know, Sculpted Software was, as we mentioned, they went on to bigger and better things. Clearly, this was not their bread and butter and what they were going to be doing as a company moving forward. So, again, I think that was just a rush, half-ass kind of, situation. I didn't hate this.
Yeah, definitely. I think you made some. Well, again, I think I agree with you. Like the most part, like the flaming great points. Most of the points I was going to mention. You definitely can. Even though these games are still part of the same hero series by Rhea, you definitely can separate the first two Sculpture games from the later two. Like what was the name of the developer again? Wave Quest. Yeah. You definitely can separate these two games because you're right. It's like, these felt more like the game was designed first, with first the educational part dropped into it afterwards as a prep. But like for the first two games, maybe that's why maybe that's why Ray decided to go back to diabetes again, because it's like, this is so common because diabetes is very common among kids that, maybe we could do it better this time around because, and honestly, the best edutainment games like Oregon Trail, like the Carmen Sandiego games, definitely have the gameplay come first. Like, and then the occasional stuff kind of dropping afterwards. Because educational wise, this is actually pretty light. Yeah. I thought because there's there's like the there's the blood glucose insulin dose meal plan information before you start a stage. Obviously there's the one screen the one screen that starts that Joe mentioned, but the fact this game is developed by different companies shows immediately because it's a very different game. It's like you actually have a map that you can go around at various stages. There's an option screen with options you can set in the game. It's like for 2 players possible in this one. Yeah. It's like, wow. It's like this is actually this is actually like a game. But while it's not a great game, still definitely plays better as a game. Definitely than the first two games did. Graphics are not quite as good, obviously. I don't think these developers didn't have the experience, the system that Sculpture did, but they're still pretty charming graphics, at least. They're pretty. I'll be honest. They're simple. Yeah. They're okay with Super NES standards. They're standards. They're not. They're not even what I would call good. But they're at least serviceable. They're not ugly. Right. There are some. The music at least seems like it connects better to the stages than in the first two games. Yeah. So, and there's actually like a small bit of difficulty here with this game, I thought, but it's still aimed at kids, but at least, you can definitely, if the game feels a bit harder at least. Yeah. Definitely much better game compared to the first two games. It's programmed. It's programmed better as a game. So, sorry. Damn it. All right. So anyway, it's programmed better as a game. It flows better, I thought. It plays better, and the educational, the educational stuff is given to you in a format that feels more like, hey, this is important as well. If we wrote in the stage, remember this stuff, whatever, go through the, etc. So, the package overall is much better. So, I can see why this game was picked up for PC porting, like 2 years later. And again, the game, and again, when the game was test marketed to target audience of diabetes, target audience like diabetes kids, and this time kids aged between 8 to 16. Again, it did well. It did well. It was well reviewed. Did the job done. I think reviews of this game would have been more kinder if anybody had actually bothered. If anybody had actually bothered to review it back then, because I couldn't find a single review of this game when it came out. Because like I said, Captain got all the attention in the media. Even though all these games were sold in stores, but nobody really cared about the 3 games, unfortunately. So. How much that affected sales, I don't know. That information's not really possible to find. But again, I was pleasantly surprised by this. There's definitely there's definitely plays and feels better as an actual game, and not just like not just like a fancy educational sideshow with like some weak gameplay slapped onto what the first 2 games did. So I will give it that much.
Yeah, and. One thing I did like too is you'd mentioned the options, so you can actually increase or decrease your insulin and blood glucose to basically adjust the difficulty, because that's one of the other things I wanted to kind of mention is that
good point. I didn't make that clear. So, yes, you can't.
Yeah,
do that.
So like I mentioned that obviously you don't want to eat too much, you don't want to eat too little, but if you do either of those things, you can actually then, in between stages, set your insulin dose to be able to offset that. So in that way, I do like the education more here than with Captain Novolin, but also like this is like you already have to have some diabetes education before taking on this, and playing it the way it's supposed to be played.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, I think that, it feels like Captain was designed for kids just being diagnosed with diabetes, helping them understand and cope with it. This game feels more like, okay, here's how you can manage it better for you, kind of like thing, if that makes sense. But, again, the game didn't sell in large numbers. It looks like, obviously, being like an educational game, the target audience was going to be limited, of course. I found only 5 copies of this game listed on eBay, 4 copies of the game sold recently. Currently prices was $125 to $300. Again, nothing sold recently for CIB, but $475 seems like the target price range that people that past copies had sold for, or people aiming for in eBay sales. Again, sealed. Listed prices ranging from $640 to $902. And still copy of the game did sell recently for pretty cheap for $500. So, again, a little bit more expensive pricing than Rex, but not really outrageous yet. So it's the last game in the series. Bronchi. I'll just say Bronchi now to make it easier because it's a tongue twister. Bronchi, that definitely is most expensive. That's most expensive to find like an eBay. I get the impression that Rocky and let me also mention real quick. I believe the name for Packy came from the famous elephant who was in a zoo in Portland for many, many years. So, they may have used that for inspiration. I don't know where the name Merlin came from, though, unfortunately. But anyway, I believe WaveQuest was developing both games at the same time, because Packy came out in June of 1995, and Bronchi was released 3 months later, like September. So I think they were doing both games at the same time. Bronchi deals with as its full name. Bronchi the Bronchosaurus implies deals with like asthma. So, which is also, again, something that kids deal with a lot. There was a fifth game planned and in the works in the series as well, too. The game was to be called The AIDS Avenger, which does take a rocket science to figure out what that game was going to be about. Again, Super NES, the PC version of that game, that game were planned. I don't know why the game got canceled. I couldn't find anything online saying anything about that. I think that if I had to guess, I think that Rhea just simply ran out of money to keep the project going by that point, because developing video games for such limited markets, especially back then when there was no internet or phones or whatever to cheaply get your stuff out there, definitely had to add up. But I don't know how far along the AIDS Adventure was in development before it got scrapped. It doesn't look like a prototype of that game surfaced or whatever. So, I mean, by 95, we're kind of getting deep into the Super NES lifespan anyway. So, but anyway, so Brocky, asthma. Joe, how's this game play?
Yeah, so this game obviously teaches you about asthma. So billions of years ago, as we know, an asteroid collided with the Earth, wiping all the dinosaurs out. Well, it wasn't so instantaneous. It happened to land in the city of San Soron. It was, there was the explosion. It covers the Earth with clouds of dust. The dinos are smart, and they build a mighty wind machine so that they can survive this catastrophe. But Mr. Rexo steals the machine, dismantles it, and thought it was a great idea to scatter the parts all over San Sovereign. And he forces the other dinos to protect these pieces. So we actually get some platforming kind of puzzle fetch quest stuff with our platforming. Jeez, I already said that. Anyway, sorry. So yeah,
it's all right.
So you can play as one of two friends, Bronchi or Trachey. Trachey, because you're tracheotomy. So you get some help also from Sam and Kayla. You got to find all the pieces to be able to restore the machine, save the planet. You develop shortness of breath by interacting with different things in the level. Every level will start by showing you the hazards that are there. Also pretty clever that I didn't want to not mention. They have like a daily express, which is like a, stone tablet newspaper that explains, asthma and how to use your inhaler and things of that nature, which I think those were great ways to incorporate the education part of it. One thing I didn't like about this game, because I'll spoiler, like this for me was the best game that we had. And I can understand why it's fetching for super high prices, because it's actually a good game that people would want. That being said, there are points in the game where you have to answer trivia questions to be able to advance. And that part of it can get kind of frustrating. So there was a point, and I don't know if it's just, it's me or what, but there was a point where like you get a part, and the dinosaur asked me the question. Of course I got it wrong because I was just shooting in the dark, and you kind of need him to get over, like, they put these like giant palm trees, that's the best way to explain it. They look like corkscrews, like giant screws upside down, that basically block your path, and then you gotta answer these questions to be able to progress further. Anyways, I got it wrong, and I couldn't figure out a way to have the question basically asked again so that I could answer it properly and get over there. So I ended up having to do a hard reset and then just doing it that way. So, just one little quirk that I came across. Other than that, this is fun. Like, you have, like, I don't know, it's like a stick of some sort that you could basically hit enemies with. You also collect lung icons as you go through the level, and you can use those lung icons to breathe hard out towards the enemy. Yeah, I mean, there's some what I would call BS enemies here, where, like, they're gonna run at you, you're gonna take damage, there's nothing you can do about that. But also it's not manageable, if that makes sense. Like, you can take the damage and continue on and you'll be okay. And this is another one, like, I think the music and sound effects are, they're good. They fit the mold here. I like the details. I think the levels are kind of bland. Like, there's detail there, but there's not, like, I feel like there should have been so much more. But the characters themselves, I think, are detailed well, especially for the size of the sprites. He's a little bit bigger than Packy and Marlin, but not much bigger, which, of course, then makes, the level that you're viewing a much bigger area. And I think that's, kind of where it suffers a bit, because, like I said, it's just, it's kind of like playing through the Flintstone games, but instead of being Fred or Barney, you're Bracky. That's the best way to explain this.
Spoiler: we are actually going to be covering the Flintstone games right.
So, I mean, this was actually good, and I enjoyed this. I did not beat this one, and I actually do plan on going back and playing this so that I can beat it.
Yeah, these two games are actually, because they were designed as games first, are actually much longer than the first two games. The first, the long plays online are about like an hour and a half, like, give or take. So, thank you again for the good analysis of all these games. I agree with you for the most part. I think personally, I had a little bit more fun, like, playing the open game, like, compared to this. But I will agree, however, that I think this game was very well polished for platformer, and, like, the trivia questions pop up every now and then, I think, are questionable game design. It's like, I think they could have done that information. I know the developers were going for, and most of the questions are ridiculously easy to answer, but they're not handled in the best way, I don't think, unfortunately. And I think that maybe, I think the game could have given you that information in some other way instead of, like, interrupting your gameplay like that, kind of like a forced progress. But yeah, beyond that, I really don't have too much to complain about. I couldn't find any. Interesting enough, I couldn't find any options in the options like the main menu for difficulty compared to the last game. Yeah. But there was the option to play the game like in English or Spanish, which is very interesting. I've never seen a Super NES game that had a language selection in it before. And it makes me wonder if the game was intended to possibly for release as well outside North America, even though it never happened. Maybe the developers felt that, because based upon their study and their testing, that is more likely they this very well could be the case. I'm just, like, spitballing here that that more immigrant kids are more likely to suffer from asthma or whatnot, and they decided that taking the time and the cart space to program in Spanish as well might be a good idea. So that's my best guess as what's going on here with that. But it was, definitely originally. So again. The game was tested with kids. Again, the game tested well. Again, hardly anybody looked at the game like when it came out. But you're not the only person. You're not the only person out there. Joe, who agrees the game's actually, like, somewhat fun. There was one person. The website. website like Engadget, which is still around today, 2007 looked at the game and said that, hey, this is actually a pretty decent game. Maybe it should be added to the Wii's Virtual Console. But anyway, so I mean, the series ended here. The series at least ended. I think on a pretty good note. These two games are actually much better than the first two games of the series for sure. So the first two games of the series, I don't think are the worst games on the platform, but they definitely are bad. At least with these two games that WaveQuest developed, they're at least fun in some way compared to the first two games for sure. So I really appreciate that. But again, because the limited target market of the audience for this game, it didn't sell that great, and maybe because people recognize it's actually a decent game, which is why the pricing of this game is the highest out of the four games. There was more copies of the game available online than the last two games. I found 11 copies of the game listed online, with 9 copies of the game recently sold. But the sale prices were much higher. Car 255 just reading $381. CIB sold $560. Listed prices were $700, $860. Sealed. Sold anywhere from $568 to $700. Listed online for $970 to $1620. So you're looking at about for carts for these games only. Captain maybe at $100 on average. Rex and Pop Packy, you probably could find like the $150 to $200 range. This one you're looking at about $300 to get for cards. So definitely the most expensive of the four games, for sure. So these games will not be cheaped out of your collection like you're a collector, unfortunately, because they are such a limited marketing. Because I'm sure the print runs of them probably are huge, but. No cheat code, no stage selects, or anything like that for these games, which I guess you're probably not surprised to hear me say. Are these great games? No, but the games set out to do what they were set out to. The games achieved what they were set out to do. They all tested very well the target audience of the kids that they were designed for, and they laid the groundwork for many other educational games like this to come along in later years, and we're still very much a thing today. So I think that I appreciate these games for being groundbreaking in that sense, and again are another interesting piece of the pie for the very diverse library of games the Super NES had in its catalog during its lifespan. Anything else you want to say? You'd like conclusion to wrap things up, Joe?
No, I mean I think we covered it. I already expressed that I am going to go and play through this game and actually beat it. So you don't hear me say that too often. So, so yeah, I mean, it's not that it's like a fantastic game or whatever, but after playing all four of these games, this was the one game where I was like, you know what, if I'm going to take anything away from this episode, it's going to be this particular game because I actually enjoyed it. I felt like, like I said, having the quizzes to kind of progress is kind of but it is what it is. You're right. It breaks up, the gameplay and whatnot, and it does seem like a curious choice, but also I don't think it's game breaking.
Yeah. So, yep, I agree with all that. But anyway, so interesting games to look at. There weren't many educational games. The games with the Super NES, and maybe so because I heard about these games, I was curious to see how they were. So I'm glad we played them, but they definitely are interesting. They definitely are. They definitely are a product of time. So, Yeah, so like we'll see. I think there probably are one or two other games that could be considered to be educational. Well, we are going to look at another educational game later on this year. We already have that one planned out. But I think beyond that one, I think I think there are a couple more. So we will be returning to the educational game field as it was later this year with a future podcast, and you probably already have an educated guess as what kind of game we may be looking at in that one. But
and it's not the Mario ones, which is the only two other ones other than the one we're going to cover later on that I can think of as far as edutainment games.
Right. So, but okay. All right then. So, thank you very much for being with us here on this extra long Super NES podcast. We hope you hopefully enjoyed it as always. Next time, as I said, we're going to get back to the schedule by releasing this next episode in a week as opposed to 2 weeks. We're going to be doing a shooter this time. R-Type 3. We already covered an earlier R-Type game, Super R-Type the System, not spoiler. We already covered the game, obviously, but was an okay shooter for being like a very early Super NES game. So R-Type 3 has a reputation of being a much better game. We'll see how much better of a game that it actually is like we played here next time. So anyway, as always, thank you very much for listening to us. We appreciate it. You can find us on Facebook. You can also send me an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you?
You can find me on Twitter at JOESUX30. Also, I have a very public Facebook. Just be warned, it's not family friendly. And then, I do the Radical Retro Roundup. I am obviously late recording that as well because of life situations. So, be on the lookout. It's about Juiced. I know I probably said that the past like 4 episodes, but seriously, we're going to be doing that. So, other than that, same old stuff.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Yeah, definitely. So, as always, thank you very much thank you very much for being here, Joe. Thank you very much thank you very much for everybody out there listening to the podcast. Stay safe, be well, and we'll catch you again next time. Later, all.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.